Exploring Healthier Masculinity Within Business, a monthly call for executive and senior leaders within industry who too rarely have a space to stop, to breathe, to take off the weight of being a leader of teams and organizations. Taking place on the first Monday of every month. Email gary.turner@radicality.co.uk. Hi there. Welcome to the next episode of In the Business of Healthy Masculinity. I'm your host, Gary Turner. You can find this platform on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on my Substack, or indeed somewhere else I've just forgotten because that's what happens sometimes. YouTube. My apologies. Just rolling a bit of vulnerability there with my guest, Zena Me. How are you, Zena?
I'm well, thank you. Very well.
Thank you. Good. Thank you for joining me today. For anyone that's actually listening and not watching us right now, do check out Zena's work at Zena, Z-E-N-A, May, M-E, that's all one word, zename.co.uk. Now, Zena, we've known each other a while, right? And I'm so grateful when you came on or agreed to come back on because you've been on this amazing journey of like eldership and eldership communities and just loads of really, really interesting stuff. So would you mind starting with a bit of an intro so people can get to know you and let us know what is eldership to you today in 2026?
Oh wow, big question, but yeah, great start. Yes, if you'd have asked me, oh gosh, how long ago? About say 15 years ago, I wouldn't have known what you were talking about. In terms of eldership. And also I would have said, I'm sorry, I'm not old enough to talk about that. As well, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, no, I'm not old. Don't label me as old. So yeah, my field of expertise is in culture making, and I've been working with kind of corporates and senior executives and leaders and boards actually for 36 years. And mainly in the space of change and transformation, restructuring, organization, mergers and acquisitions. So any major kind of changes to organizations is what I would normally get involved with. And so that's fortunate. I've been very fortunate for a very long time that I've worked with kind of senior execs and leaders and kind of watched how they manage those transitions, good and bad, truthfully. So I've always been pretty much external to that rather than internal. So set off my career working at the police and with the police. And so that hierarchy, those ranks, were very challenging, obviously, when you first start working with them. But then fascinating when you kind of get into if you like, underneath what's going on in those cultures. So part of that kind of, I suppose, my deep dive development into leadership and kind of culture making. We tend to call it culture development or other words for it, but for me, a leader is a culture maker. It's actually, we have the capacity to actually make culture and create culture, but we don't tend to do that. We don't tend to teach leaders that either, truthfully. We might teach them how to change culture, but not how to make it, not how to create it. And that's one of the things that I kind of discovered along the way. And I suppose kind of in my early 30s, I came across the work of William Bridges on transitions and started to recognize that, like, oh, there's certain things that happen maybe in certain times of our lives. So like, in your 20s, you're trying to work out like how the hell to get away from your parents, how to kind of find your feet in your own and become hopefully a viable human being, as in like you can stand on your own 2 feet and you can make it in the world without your parents. And then kind of in the 30s, then we're kind of trying to work out like maybe who we need to be with, who our community is going to be, what our social connection is going to be, and all those kind of good stuff. Maybe family making, part of that. And then, of course, at some point, and I suppose, because I've been on this journey with these leaders that I've been working with from a very young age, at some point, you then hit the midlife crisis where you go, oh, hold on a minute. What now? And we don't have much literature on this because in our culture, in the Western culture, our rites of passage have disappeared. So, those natural rites of passages that are marked in Indigenous cultures are not acting hours at all. You know, it's almost like, well, leave school and might meet someone, and blah, blah, blah. We don't actually have these rites of passages in terms of our development as human beings. And it was when actually I started working with leaders, senior exec leaders, on a high performance leadership program at Cranfield. So I was a tutor on one of the high performance leadership programs, and my specialism was dealing with kind of gatekeepers of the rites of passage that stop us from necessarily going to the next level of our human development, human consciousness. And one of the things that we started to recognize as a tutor team was that in some ways we were holding the space of the elders for these groups of execs, that we were kind of holding space for them to transition to their next level. And I would say of consciousness. So we called it high performance, but in reality, it was high conscious. It was almost like the higher conscious leader was what we were working on in terms of the way the program was structured. And so noticing what are those things that kind of stop us from going to that higher level? What are the things that kind of stop us from getting there? And we recognized that we were holding this space, and that we identified as eldership. So that kind of sent me on a bit of a journey of kind of going, what is that? If I'm expected to be this elder, and I was only 46 at the time when I was doing this, I was like, what does that look like? What is that? And so I started on a deep exploration into that. So that's kind of my journey into this space. And of course, I've been on a very deep dive ever since in this space around really understanding that eldership is a part of our culture. It's not just a role that we take. So just because you get old doesn't mean you get an elder. So you can get older and not an elder. So elder is something very, very different. It's something that holds the space for those rites of passages for the community. Whatever community, whatever space that is, that's what the elder does. And they're not attached to the system the way, say, a leader would be. So they're actually standing outside. They're like edge dwellers is how I would describe it. Like they're just there supporting and holding and allowing for the natural evolutionary movement of what needs to happen. So it's a bit of a scary place to be, because you're not quite sure what's going to happen in that liminal space that people step into. So we don't just kind of get old. There is a liminal space in between that we have to kind of let go of things and maybe embrace things. There may be things that we've got to look at that are uncomfortable and painful. So it's you know, that's part of the rite of passage. That's part of that liminal space. But essentially, for me personally, one of the things that I've recognised in that is that the elder's role is to support the social cohesion of the community. It's to hold that space for community. So it kind of holds that and stops it from fragmenting or going into kind of division. So it works with the evolutionary process, if you like. And that's why some people find that quite a difficult place to step into, because it's a very different one that we know, particularly in the Western world. I hope that gives you a bit of a picture.
It's amazing. And if you're listening, please do drop in the comments wherever you're picking up this conversation. Because Zena, I've watched you evolve in the last few years with this eldership journey. And I've got to be honest, you're making my spine tingle at how you just explained it. And I think how you're explaining it now feels so clear. It's not that it was unclear before, but because you were in the messy sort of building it and experiencing it, like I've not seen you just express that so crystal clear. And I find it so intriguing for me is, without there being any, done some weird thing where the AI camera zooms my face in and out, which is always interesting. The beauty of what you just shared for me is that without blame, shame, guilt, getting emotionally triggered, you've just spoke to a really powerful opportunity for leaders, particularly within business spaces, but beyond, to bring their people consciously together and not keep politics out of business, or pretend that what's going on in the world outside isn't actually happening because you've got to hit the number or you've got to acquire that company. I get a real sense that ability to bring the real world into work, but still do the work. That feels a very eldership sort of space to be working in. Would that be fair, or would you challenge or build on that? I'm just trying to pass it apart a bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point, actually. I think it is about non-judgment. So there is that has to be recognized if there's been something that's been perpetrated, or that somebody's been victimized. So within any kind of system, organizing human system, those things exist. In lots of ways. We've all been perpetrators, we've all been victims, we've all been kind of rescuers. That's just part of our messy humanity. But it's not necessarily about judgment and blame, because what happens when we do judgment and blame and punishment is that people then go on the defensive, and like you said, they then feel shame, and then if you like whatever that trauma has been within the system itself is never going to get released. It just keeps going round and round and round and round and round, and it keeps getting repeated in repeating patterns. And what for me the elder does is it's about kind of going, what patterns no longer serve us now, so let's have a look at what there's some patterns that have served us, and maybe they've been needed to be there for survival reasons, but actually kind of going forward, once the kind of the trauma has gone, if you like, once that incident has come to an end, how do we then get back into some kind of social cohesion and absorb what's just happened in such a way that, if you like, we can go deeper and more connected, and it makes us wiser. It's like the system then learns from what's actually happened. Because what then happens if we're not careful is it just keeps getting caught in the system, and it keeps repeating itself. So and that's where we hear the term systemic, where we go, oh, that's a systemic issue. And there's lots and lots of systemic issues, but people don't know how to deal with systemic issues, and that's where the problem lies, in a way, because it's almost like we can't just resolve a systemic issue. We have to come together collectively to work with it and work through it and the pain of that.
Good. I'm having another reaction, everyone. I tell you why, Zena. So my previous guest, and actually one of the sponsors of this platform, Hannah Litt, does a lot of work around sort of social justice and sort of holding space in a similar way to that you do. And one of the things that she said on episode 11 was a reminder, and it's a challenge to me, if I'm honest, because I do forget this sometimes when we talk about systems. She's like, Gary, the systems are made up of people. These are not ethereal things out there. No, it's us. And I think you just spoke to that so powerfully, right? Which is this, we have to come together and do that uncomfortable work of staring at some things that aren't always comfortable to look at, but we can process it and deal with it as a collective if we appreciate that it's actually it's almost always going to be a human related topic in the end, even if it is systemic by nature.
Yeah, and in an organizing system, a human organizing system has systemic issues in it. So we can't kind of go, oh, well, that happened in history, so it's nothing to do with us, or with nothing we can do about it. It's like, well, actually, we're part of that system, with the continuity of that system. We're part of it, and there are humans in it. So so therefore we're somehow connected in, and we can bring that back in such a way as to collectively work with it. But I think there has been a real lack of education and skill about how to do that, because of course it takes all of us to be I think she's called Suzanne Zellner, because she calls it courageously curious.
Nice.
We have to be courageously curious, because it's going to be painful. There's going to be things that kind of emerge where that we go, oh, that's uncomfortable. But if we've created a space that goes, yes, but we have to go through the discomfort, and this is not about blame or judgment. It is about making people accountable. Let's just be clear.
Like that.
It's not kind of releasing. It's not kind of going, hold on a minute, it's fine. You didn't know what you were doing. It's like, no, for the system to heal, that whoever's perpetrated something has to own the fact that goes, yeah, I did it. Not with a kind of, I did it because I did. It's like, no, actually that happened. That did happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then to recognize that's, you know, their behavior did something that, you know, and it may not have been consciously malicious, but nevertheless, they did something that perpetrated some kind of injury in some shape or form to the collective or to an individual within the system. It's like that has to be recognized. And I think that's what we're frightened of, that because we're frightened of the shame. We're frightened of the punishment, you know. I mean, we automatically go to punishment when oh right, well, does that person then need punishing? It's like the punishment is not, is in a way is the exposing of what's happened, you know, because actually that, if you like, it's come out into the open.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think this is where people struggle with it, because I think we get stuck in this punitive system of, you know, well, what do we, this person needs to be punished, we need to lock them away, or we need to, you know, get rid of them in some shape or form. And it's like that actually is not learning anything. You know, it's not like kind of going, what's happened here? What's happened in this situation? And where did this begin? Because it you know, most of what we're facing today is not what we started.
Mm-hmm.
It started generations ago, you know, it's in the history. So it's like, it didn't start with us. And again, that's no excuse for not then owning any responsibility, but it's like it rarely started with us, and it certainly didn't start with us if it's something was systemic.
God, it's so intriguing. You mentioned earlier on, Zena, and I'm really sort of marinating in this conversation around, just because we're getting older doesn't necessarily mean we're becoming an elder. And I'm sort of weaving that into what you just shared. And I'm holding the question. And it's an invitation, I guess, for all of us, depending on your answer. Can any human being become an elder potentially? Does every human have the potential to become an elder?
I'd say so, yes. It's a stage of life, actually. It's a stage, and it's not a stage that we recognise. And I think that's the problem, is that people don't recognise there is a place within a healthy, functioning culture. There is eldership, you know. So you know that there is that stage. It's not that someone is just getting old and will die. It's like they have, you know, they get to a stage within their own development, and conscious development, where they have become, you know, they know who they are, they know what they're about, they know what their gifts are, they know what their wounds are, you know, they know what their role is in the community, they know what they are here to contribute. So, you know, a lot of my work, on the personal development side of the work that I do, is about looking into someone's helping and supporting someone in their ancestral history, to find out kind of what happened to your ancestors. So if for instance, my ancestors were in an industrial accident where, say, the father was killed and the family weren't compensated properly for it, and therefore and the family ended up being destitute, then then somebody maybe from that manages to survive, then they've got that in their DNA. That trauma is in their DNA, and therefore there is a potential alchemy that can happen with that, where suddenly they can turn that DNA into something really positive, as in, like, they may find themselves supporting organizations, understanding why health and safety is so important, or, you know, to the wider community, not just like in this organization, but to the wider community, because if something happens to this person, that then means that they can't provide for their family, you know, they've got something they can offer as a gift, so it turns that trauma into a gift. And I think that's the bit that, you know, we need to understand about, like, those traumas that are in our systems are potential alchemy for the whole community if we can work with it. But what tends to happen is that we tend to hide those traumas, and we tend to shame. We feel so much shame about them that they're kind of cloaked in often secrets and shame, and therefore they never get to being into that space of eldership, if you like, where we go, we have this amazing gift to offer here, because that's our niche, if you like, within the community. That's what we uniquely bring into our community because of the ancestral stories that we have and what are in us as DNA.
Pretty much, just to remind everyone, zename.co.uk, one word, zename.co.uk. Follow Zena on LinkedIn. Go and look at her amazing website, Eldership for Leaders. Zena, honestly, you're in like flow state. Like I can see it in you. Like you're in absolute flow state. And it's really inspiring for me to hear because, I'll be honest with everyone that's listening or watching. Like we had a little catch up before we come on live today. And today for me is a difficult day because I'm in a system that doesn't want to have the difficult conversations. It doesn't want to sit in discomfort, to explore what some of those patterns may be. And that's quite challenging for me in this moment. And what I feel positively from a conversation like this is, I see the humanity. Everyone's got their own stuff they've got to deal with, point one. But point two, the opportunity you're inviting us into, Zena, like the ripple effects, the generative nature of doing this eldership work isn't just about you and the organization you're part of. What I'm hearing and sensing, it really does. If you're coming from this space more often, you're going to go home differently. You're going to inform your local football club, your local cookery club, the local church you're part of. You're going to infect positively everyone you come into contact with, I would imagine, right? If you're able to come from this eldership space.
Absolutely. It isn't just in one, that I have a role as an elder in an organization or even in the community. It's like you're actually in the flow of that function within the actual culture itself. So it's like you will be, and you don't identify yourself as an elder, you're seen as one. Do you see what I mean? As in, like, people will gravitate to you because, if you like, they know that you are operating in a different space. So if you like, think about like being really zoomed out, and also, maybe even think of yourself as on the edge dwelling, where if you like, things kind of come in and go out, but you don't belong. And I think that's the other element to it, is that we start to work with belonging in a very different way, because belonging can be it's an integral part of who we are as humans, to want to belong and need to belong for safety reasons. And need to identify with certain groups and tribes and families and religions and all those kind of things. But when you become an elder, if you like, you become uniquely you. So it's not that you're not part of all those other systems, it's that you can actually step away from the systems and find that place of non-belonging, that edge dwelling space, because that's where you have the capacity then to see and hold the space for many, many different perspectives. And support people being able to see things from different perspectives in the ways that they've never seen them before. So I mean, I'll use an example from my working in kind of local politics a few years ago now. But I was asked to do a session with a council, and on that council there was quite a lot of division within the council representatives. So I just kind of asked them to come together, and we just kind of sat together, and I asked them some questions to share with each other. And they just started to open up about their ancestors, how they come to doing this job, what had happened to them, what their family stories were. And suddenly people were talking in a way they'd never talked before. They saw each other in a different way. And actually some people approached me afterwards and actually said, do you know what, I didn't realise what I joined when I joined like this particular party, political party, and I didn't really ask myself any questions about what was making me join this party. And now I understand that actually it was something to do with what had happened to me and my family that was an injustice. And so I just kind of joined it without even asking any questions about maybe what is this really about, and what am I representative, and what am I identifying with. And it just completely changed the whole dynamic within the room. And that was just like a couple of hours. It wasn't even a full day. And there was a lot of trepidation because there was so much division. People were really frightened stepping into that room. But by the end of it, everybody was chatting with one another, and they were humanizing each other instead of identifying with all these divisions, which is so powerful. And that's, to me, that's eldership. That's the social cohesion piece that goes, can we see things from different perspectives? But it's very difficult to, if somebody's not holding the space to do that, because obviously I may have to let go of what I'm identifying with, and I maybe just kind of loosen it a little bit, just step away from it a little bit, and just and see what. But often people don't even know what they're identifying with truly. They truly don't know what. It's almost like they've been drawn in, and not necessarily ask themselves that conscious question that goes, what's my attachment to this? Why am I attached to this? Why am I identifying with this? And they often nobody really asks those questions, because we tend to hang out with those people who are in the same kind of identity camps as that makes us feel comfortable, that because we feel like we belong to them.
I've got two things popping up for me, Zena, here. One, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Like, what am I identifying with? What a beautiful provocation and question, and one I'm going to sit in this afternoon. So thank you, first of all, for that. The other thing I'm really intrigued about as I hear you speak, it's almost like, and please correct or challenge or build on this, it's almost like you can't be the best version of an elder yourself if you don't belong to yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. And belonging starts with you. I mean, belonging actually starts with the mother. So, we underestimate how powerful mother is, because that's where we first belonged. Literally, we were attached. We grew inside us. So that's where our first belonging is. But our true belonging is to ourselves. So the journey of belonging is to ourselves. But we don't tend to live in a world that kind of understands that, because it's almost like we'd rather kind of create, if you like, place systems that have very strong identities, and you have to identify with one thing or another. You can't identify with it all.
Binary. Yeah.
I know. So it's almost like you can't be loyal to one thing or another, but the loyalty really is to you. This is, the belonging really is to you. This is where your loyalty is. Am I being true to me? Am I being true to my soul's calling here? Because although we very rarely talk about the soul, but think about, I think it's James Hillman talks about, like, we're like a little acorn, and when we're born, we have the soul, and that soul is where our unique kind of DNA is. So yes, we belong. Yes, we came into the world in a family and a place and a culture and all those kind of things. But actually, there's a soul in there, and there's a unique DNA that goes, you have been put on this earth to contribute to your community, your place, in a very unique way. In our culture, we don't see children that way. We don't go, oh, I wonder what this child is going to kind of, contribute to the community. We go, oh, what job do you think we're going to do? And, hopefully they'll be like, Uncle Bob, and they might join the police. Or it's like, what are you going to do when you grow up? It's like, we don't understand that actually the child is born and has a unique contribution to the tribe, to the community. But we never think about that. And it's very, very unusual to look at it that way. But actually, when you're working in this space, in the eldership space, you start to notice that people have got something very unique to contribute, but we don't look at that in our culture.
It's so interesting, and I can absolutely affirm this point from a work point of view, right? Myself personally, others that I know, Zena, because some systems I've been part of, that and you can talk about a job spec, but it really comes back to the point you just made. Like the reductionist nature of certainly the Western world, to put you in a box and say this needs to be done, therefore that's your identity now. So Gary, the sales manager, that's who we know Gary as, not Gary, the guy that has grandkids, or Gary, the person that wants to play football, or that sort of complexity and that beautiful messiness that makes us all human. It's completely
where did Gary come
out.
from? Exactly. Where did Gary come from? What's his background? What's his ancestry? Where was he born? How did he come to be here in this place? What has drawn him into this organization? Even because we forget, we tend to we tend to believe that organizations are like families, and they're not. I always shudder when they go, we've got a lovely family culture here. I go, oh no. Because it's like an organizing system that's based on business or institution or is not a family. It's like, no, you've got your family, and that's where you ultimately kind of belong. You don't belong in an organization. You're only there transitionally passing through, contributing with hopefully a beautiful balance of exchange. Like I bring this and you give me that, so whether that's training or experience or learning or money, it's like, what is that exchange? But we don't think of organizations like that. And actually often we talk about being loyal to the organization, but in reality, it's like what they're talking about is conforming to the rules. That's what they're really talking about. And so we get confused between conforming and cohesion. Because if you like, when we talk about true social cohesion, it's people actually being their unique self and bringing that into an organizing system, knowing that they might not be there for very long or however long they're going to be there. They're going to contribute in some way and leave something hopefully of value behind when they leave. We never think of organization systems like that at all.
Right. So I'm not even joking. Like, I want to extend this podcast to like 2.5 hours from just 30 minutes. I feel like we're just getting going. So we've had a few conversations, Zena, but this is landing differently for me. So thank you. It really, really is. So I'm going to wrap up today's conversation, if I may. If you were going to sort of paint a picture or do a bit of art for someone that doesn't understand eldership, what sort of behaviors would you be painting on that picture? How would what the energy of that picture look and feel like? This is a completely random sort of reflection, but I just wanted to try and bring it to life for people from Zena's lens on the world as an elder.
Okay, so an elder stands on a bridge. That's the best way. They stand on the bridge, and if you like, there's I'm going to say citizens, because I like citizens rather than consumers or employees. Everybody's a citizen. So an elder sees people as a citizen, not as a consumer, or belonging anywhere. They're purely a citizen. So they're stood on the bridge, and they stand between the past and the emerging future, and they hold that space between those places, and they help people kind of face into that emerging future by holding the space of the bridge, that transitionary space, that liminal space is what, for me, eldership does. It kind of does not kind of land in any land. It sits on a bridge. What it does do is it supports people to face the void, because there is a void when people kind of step out of an identity or an organization. There's always going to be a void, and what the elder does is help and support that person or that community that's in facing that void. They work with the whole system, so that there isn't just like working with individuals. They look at the individual as part of all the systems that they also belong to. So they don't just look at the individual, they look at that individual as part of many, many systems. So they deal with the whole system that individual is in. They are looking for that cohesion, how to support people coming into cohesion in order for the collective to kind of move forward together in the community. And there is no eldering without community, to be truthful. They are an integral kind of, you don't have one without the other. You don't have community without elder, healthy community without elders, or that eldership function. And you also don't, you don't have any kind of eldership without community. So we don't this is not the Lone Ranger John Wayne story of like, which, here I am, I'm an elder, I'm going to rescue everyone. It's like, no, you don't do that. You're very respectful of the evolution and the nature and the organic movement of whatever somebody's journey is on, they're on it. It's not you to do anything but to support that person to fulfill that soul's journey.
What a beautiful way to wrap up. Zena, thank you Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening. Zena May, one word, ZENAME.co.uk. Thank you for joining us. Go check out Zena's work. You are an amazing human being. Thank you for everything you're doing, Zena.
Thanks, Gary.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.